just felt really compelled to share this video about what's happening this month of awakening, activation, and some pretty deep intensity. This might be the most intense month of the year astrologically, even though it begins the astrological year because of all the Aries transits. So I want to break this down first by saying, the Aries time of the year is always when we need to dedicate the work, the service, the actions of our life to a higher power and know that there is a great doer, the great source. In the Bhagavad Gita, it's Krishna telling us, I am the true doer, right? And it might be for others of us another connection to spirit that allows us to remember to not take so much ego investment in everything that we do and to offer it up, because this month we could get really radically invested in the ego, in defense mechanisms, in irritation, combustibility, competition, uh, reactivity. So we have to be really, really careful with this. And at the same time, we need to burst out of the Piscean womb. We've all kind of been napping a bit in and wake up. This is a call to action. This is a real call to action. And that's the beauty of Aries. The first sign of the zodiac that says God helps those who help themselves. And so I want to break down week by week some of the main transits. This won't be a long video, but I want to give you some highlights, especially as we look at the new moon in Aries, because what's happening is we have all of these planets coming to touch the recent movement of Neptune and Saturn into Aries. And that is going to bring certain challenges and certain opportunities with it. Um, we might feel those challenges a bit more. So let's break it down. I'm going to share the screen with you and show you the chart. And we will move through the animated chart here together. Awesome. So this is the full moon. We started the month with the full moon in Libra, which is always a time when we are really aware of our need, our interdependence on partners and collaborators, and our ability to cooperate with each other. This is a Libra theme, but um, one of the things that was happening with this new full moon that we're playing with is square with Jupiter, which can bring a sense of abundance or opportunity, but also a sense of overextending ourselves, saying yes to too much. And that can bring some overwhelm in some of those relationships, even like those Cancer familial relationships. And so this is a time too that we could be doing some healing around our familial relationships. Healing is a big theme this month because we're going to have the sun come to Chiron again around the new moon. So I'm going to take us forward and look at when the energy really starts to intensify. The first 10 days is, probably the most calm part of the month. And if we move this forward, here's the 4th, and we're at kind of the Easter Sunday here. Um, Not a huge amount to talk about, but the main thing is coming in on the 9th as Mars goes into Aries. Mars gets really on fire with this sign. So the passion, the drive, the motivation goes into that sign of action, leadership, risk taking, daring. Okay. And when Mars moves into Aries, yes, he's very strong. He's in his own sign. Sometimes a planet in its own sign can be too strong. And so this is like too much fire. Is that some anger, some rage? How are we going to navigate anger or reactivity? Well, you know, the great teacher Seneca of the Stoic tradition, talks about delay as being the key to anger. Now, this theme of delay is really important this month because we're going to have planets hitting Saturn, which brings a sense of delay or friction or constriction or obstacle. And you might know that phrase, the obstacle is the way, which is a very, kind of famous Stoic mantra. Marcus Aurelius, the great Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, said the obstacle is the way. And this is the month where we are needing to consider what obstacles are in our life and what kind of tenacity, persistence, resilience, and determination we're going to have to achieving our goals. and also be aware of where we're forcing or being too aggressive towards something. And on the other hand, maybe we're not being, you know, maybe not pushing towards our goals enough. And so, this delicate balance this month, we're really going to feel that fire under our asses when Mars moves into Aries. But then we get this sort of crusading energy of Mars conjunct Neptune. And so, watch what happens here when planets come into Aries. Mercury will do this soon, as we'll talk about. They touch Neptune and then they touch Saturn. And so there's a spiritualizing quality that we're being invited to with each planet first, where Neptune is asking us almost to dissolve the, let's say, the egoic force of that planet and look towards the higher octave or the higher spiritual potential of that planet. So Mars, Neptune, 9th to 15th, look at bringing in more spiritual practices, meditation, qigong, yoga. Maybe you're thinking about, I want to travel for a retreat or a spiritual pilgrimage. That's very Mars, Neptune, and Aries. Or I want to lead something like that. Aries, the leader. If that is something you're thinking about, I'd love to talk to you about locational astrology and get strategic around where you're going to go and when you're going to go there to lead that retreat or go on that retreat. But let's just say we are going to start to feel like I need movement. I'm going to get more restless with Mars coming into Aries. And sometimes we can get very idealistic when Mars touches Neptune, towards partners or towards our drives. Sometimes we get confused, right? So during this time, we need to allow ourselves again to spiritualize our desires, to connect with our guides, our higher selves, maybe even using more archetypal tools or divination tools. Neptune rules this. So astrology, human design, um, divination like tarot and cards and oracles, to guide us. The pendulum. I've been working with clients in my own life about the pendulum to validate some of what we're finding in the charts. This is really good work with Mars Neptune. Then when Mars comes to Saturn, this is where it really intensifies. Traditional astrology says that Mars and Neptune, here's the exact date of Mars Neptune, April 12th. And then you'll start to feel this Mars Saturn come in by the 15th. This is when it gets really intense. The moon comes in for the new moon, not just yet, but this basically by the 15th. See, the moon is between Mars and Saturn here. That's very delicate that day. This is at the PM on New York. So we're looking at sort of a lot of that day in the US, intense, active. But Mars and Saturn were the traditional malefics or challenging planets. Mars being feisty, fiery, aggressive, combative, um, but motivating and driven. Saturn being, heavy, pressurized, a block, a challenge, even something to do with, the government or the institution. And what we start to see happen, and you're probably going to feel something with this day, or it begins or inaugurates this process, which is the Mars conjunct Saturn feels like we're driving with the brakes on. And this is going to be really active from the 15th, exact right here in this extremely intense day, the 18th, 19th being the most, and 20th, because Mercury comes into the mix. Let's back it up. Mars Saturn by itself, and Mars is going to win in this battle because, Mars is in his home sign. Saturn is in the sign of its fall. Saturn likes to take its time and be judicious and be responsible. It's actually, Libra is a really good sign for Saturn. It's this exaltation. If you think about that, it's like justice, equality, and these things take time. They take time to get clear on. Business relationships, business is built on relationships. So if you think of Libra and you think of like shaking the hand in business, that is actually the best version of Saturn. But in Aries, Saturn is like, I got something big to do. I got a rush to do it. And maybe I haven't built out the structures or the systems or the strategies. Feel all those words, ST, 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 structure, system, strategy, Saturn. We need to stop, and something will make us stop here. The challenge with Mercury coming into Aries is that, you know, right as Mercury does this, you can see this week here, like between it's full on. So Mercury's been in Pisces. We already know for the last few months that that could be a bit confusing. The if right, that's very Mercury Pisces. I can't speak clearly, or I can't say what I mean what I say. It's kind of circuitous, and people aren't following through, or you have to send out 100 emails to make one thing make sense. Look, when Mercury touches Neptune, it's the same thing. We want to be more dreamy, we want to be more poetic, we want to be more artistic, and that's the best way of using this. Also more spiritual, for instance, channeling, receiving our messages from our guides, doing nation work. But clarity is not coming just yet. But that makes it really challenging, right? When we're like, hey, what am I committed to? What are my actions for? I see the obstacle and I don't know what to do, and my mind is confused, right? This is where this gets really tricky, and we're gonna have to do a lot of surrender work. And this is why I'm talking about offering our actions, offering our work, our service, our relationships, everything we're doing this month, because it does get really slippery and tricky. And here you see 1415, Mercury moves into Aries. Now look at all these planets in Aries. Chiron, the wounded healer, Sun, Saturn, Moon on this day, these 2 days, Mars, Neptune, Mercury. So this grand stellium. And so travel wise, these days can be quite difficult. Mercury on Neptune, Mercury coming to Mars, and for communication, so for technology, I would be backing stuff up like crazy, before this. It's almost like a little retrograde action because, think about what Mars can do to Mercury. He can bring severing types of words or bring something that needs to get fixed with a computer or a car. Mercury things, right? So there's like a battleground around those Mercury things. And that also means just communicating with each other. Now think, it's not just Mercury hitting Mars. First there's the confusion of Mercury Neptune or the disorientation mentally, and then there's Mercury coming to Mars. And Mercury's in Mars sign of Aries already. So there's already like we're thinking fast, we're thinking on our feet, which is good, but we're sometimes like saying things before we really consider the ramifications of them. And this is where there could be a lot of reactive, combustive fighting words, or aggressive words, or frustration. Frustration is a major theme with Mars conjunct Saturn. When you add Mercury to the mix, there's something coming where I, you know, maybe I'm trying to say something, it's coming out more aggressive, or it's being received that way. I'm trying to make something happen or motivate an action, and then, a boss, a friend, a lover, a child is, temper tantrums are flaring here from all of us. And this is where the spiritual work is really going to be tested for us, taking that amygdala break, right? By breathing out, exhaling for longer when we do get triggered, right? And, how we temper our anger, um, and, and take that breath and watch and witness what's happening and really work with that delay. And if it's not anger, or maybe it's frustration, maybe it feels like an attack. In Course in Miracles, we say, "In my defenselessness is my salvation." And this idea that um, it's only the ego self that feels like it needs to defend, um, right? Because it believes itself to be separate. And this is where we need to really dedicate ourselves this month, because this this new moon is right here. Let's say, actually, it's kind of right at the end of the day here. So if you come right here, you're going to see that the new moon is at about 27 Aries, right on Chiron. See this? On April 17th. Remember this day, because look at that position of Mercury with Neptune and Mars South. And this new moon on Chiron suggests there may be collectively a wounding. Obviously, we know there's more going on, and that this doesn't portend more peace, right? The opposite sign, Libra, is the sign of peace. And this feels like there may even be other parties getting involved in battles or conflicts. It's also really challenging with this new moon around the markets. Mercury markets trade, right? Mercury hits Mars, Mercury hits Saturn. There can be a lot of tension, a feeling of maybe no movement, that stagflation idea, but even some big drop of something, in the markets. And be really sensitive to our investments during this time. Maybe be very, very defensive with where you're invested. This doesn't look great for that. Mercury hitting Mars and then Saturn, and he's going to be right between the two of them right here. So look at that Chiron and Sun Moon, and you'll see that right here, 1920 is when you're going to have Mercury. There's the 18th, but here's sort of 1920 Mercury, Mars, Saturn, and this is it's tense, right? And sometimes we feel communicatively blocked with Mercury, Saturn. One of the best ways to work with this, right, at this new moon, first of all, a wound is going to come up for each one of us with Chiron. Um, Now, because Mercury and Mars are Saturn together, does the wound have to do with our desires, our passions? Are we pushing enough towards real goals? The real goals here may be like, hey, we better rally. We better get together with each other. We better form communities where all of our leadership areas can come out, where our ambitions can be driven towards the same goals, which we know needs to be sustainability for all of us. Stopping this extracted economy, which is like not sustainable. Being able to take care of each other, right? But this is really competitive, this energy. And so, how do we compete to be the best version of ourselves, and at the same time not compete with each other? I'm thinking about some of the things in the U.S. with this, where you know the price of so many things, housing, groceries, everything is so off the charts. And part of the problem here is that there's an ethos of capitalism. And the fact is it's not working. It's not going to continue to work for the majority of people. And if we see this recession energy continuing, escalating, um, this starts to get really challenging for people. And it's the frustration and the fuming, this may be also showing up as we're going to rally and get on the streets. But if we're going to do that, are we going to rally against? Are we going to start to turn towards our neighbors and build the networks of the world we want to live in? And as I was teaching this year of Starkatopia Rising, you know, I believe we're seeking something that is really cosmic, embodied into the earth plane, using astrology, using archetypal tools to form eco villages, intentional communities, and sustainable neighborhoods. Right? There's an incredible book called "This Is Where We Belong," and another book called "Everyday Utopia." And I really want to recommend these because they're really about like repatterning our relationship to housing, social life, family and parenting, child rearing, romantic life. Um, and we need a paradigm shift. That is the best thing about Aries. It's ready for a paradigm shift and it's ready to act on it. And we are getting the call here. But again, when it comes to money and trade, communication, personal and otherwise, when it comes to travel, that middle week is very, very, very tense. And we might expect, again, more travel delays, more obstacles, as obstacles the way. So what are we going to learn through that? The best thing about this month is Venus, because Venus is in her home sign of Taurus. So there is some kind of I love this for bringing us together, sensually embodied dance, music, arts, but also to resource ourselves. And this is where we need to start looking at, what can I trade? What can I barter? How can we grow our own food, be less reliant on these bigger systems, and all the, start to support our local economies. Um, this needs to be their priority, and around the world, and especially in the US, with what's happening here. Uh, because just after all this Mars, Mercury, Saturn energy is, the sun goes into Taurus. That does tend to calm things a bit, but Venus will come to Uranus, the very last degree of Taurus, just before both planets go into Gemini. But the Uranus transit is huge because this is for the next 8 years, 7 years, 8 years. And you might remember that last summer, Uranus went into Gemini. And so we're looking at a huge evolution and revolution around information technology. This is going to speed everything up. Probably the AI trade is going to come back in some ways, but maybe a new version of what that looks like, because Uranus will start to trine Pluto, especially as like, June, May comes in, and that's going to be accelerating a lot of change. And I think a lot of revolutionary movements on the planet. Uranus was square Pluto during uh, the 2010s, early 2010s, when we had the Occupy Wall Street movements and a lot of protests like the Arab Spring, all of that. Something similar coming. But there's a flow here. And maybe this is a way that, instead of just rallying or protesting against, we are also moving in the direction of forging new alliances with each other and becoming more self-sustaining community to community. What kinds of networks can we build? What kinds of new kind of profile sites where we look at who and what farms and what communities have what resources, right? Different, you know, kind of CSAs, community sponsored agriculture, different communities trading more with each other, supporting each other more. Um, and, this is probably also going to get people more restless, um, just in general, right? Um, I think as the summer comes in, it's going to be pretty strong. There's going to be a lot of restless energy in the sky, and you have to look at the area where Aries is in your chart. If you don't know much about, what's going on with that, we could do a reading and look at that. You also want to think about, um, there's a new way of working with tech and AI and inventive innovation that each one of us needs to bring to a sort of entrepreneurial or pioneering path. This is the month where it's like, I got to be more taking a risk with my business or my professional life. Aries is like that. And I was teaching a big workshop this week on using human design for business modeling, especially creating premium packages. So instead of just jumping into something, which is an Aries way, let's be more strategic. Saturn, right? Mars, Saturn. These are my long-term goals with my business. Um, and this is how I can use my astrology and my human design to build this out the most sustainable way and the most efficient way and the most successful way, using the resources I have to leverage what I have. That can be leveraging previous classes, leveraging communities, leveraging joint venture partners. This is the way we want to think this next month. And then go out and offer, right? And yeah, take some risks there, but do it in a way that feels more confident because you've applied these different tools in your life. That's what I help clients with. So if you're interested in that, send me a message, respond here, and we can talk and set up a strategy session, the Unleash Your Genius session, where we actually look at your business model and how we can apply astrology and design. Again, with Uranus and Venus, there is usually a radical shift, a revolution in our relationships in some way. And we have to be willing to be more experimental, And I like Venus and Gemini. I have Venus and Gemini, uh, because, it's a very social position for the goddess. And but with Uranus, it feels like it's time for a wake up call around knowing our neighbors. Gemini is a sign of neighbors. And this is like, let's go back to potlucks. Let's go back to um, weekly gatherings. Let's get really like clear on our shared values. Let's start to share our resources together, from the lawnmower to the, to the garden, right? Um, this is going to be a really important season to do that. And spring is always a good time for that. But with Venus and Gemini, there's a great opportunity for that. And to be aware that Uranus, the tech that's coming in, the innovation, it starts here with new ways of socializing with each other, and staying not in any kind of victim mode with this, that this is all about us being creators. And that's the thing with the Aries cycles we've been talking about. We have to take action now. So I hope this has been inspiring for you. These are the big transits of the month. Um, it's going to be a pretty wild ride. Um, be patient, practice sabr, as it's called in the Sufi tradition, patience as a station of divine remembrance, and also practice shukr. Shukr is gratitude. Starting the day with shukr, when you have your blessings, be in shukr, and when you have your challenges, be when your patience is tested, be with sabr. These are actually divine states of being. So these will be a big part of our work this month. I hope everyone can, get motivated and driven. And if I could support you, send me a message and we will stay in touch through Substack. Much love.